some self-reflection and figuring out what I'm going to do next on this channel. I guess it's been maybe a week since I've been on. It's been a while, but I'm back. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to read the archetype gallery. This might take a while, might not. And just for my own reference, because I'm still working on my archetypical wheel, and just take note of the archetypes that I think belong in my house or in my wheel, and then we'll go from there. So, I mean, I do hope people are enjoying the content of this channel. If they're not, that's okay. I'm mostly doing it as an experiment into what active healing looks like. Alternative healing, what it actually looks like. I've been through so much trauma in my life. I've had a lot of loss. I've suffered extreme terrorism by people who have claimed to love me. I've been terrorized by people who have claimed to love me. And that has been really challenging. Learning to be alone and being okay with it, learning how to not invest so much in what other people think of me, let people think what they want to think, learning how to stand true to my convictions. When I mess up, autocorrect, go back and do it differently, learn from my lessons. It's a life journey, as hopefully most of us already know. But yeah, so I am doing active alternative healing on severe trauma. I have CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is, my life is a series of traumatic events, just one after another, no time to heal. And then severe betrayal by more than a handful of people who have claimed to love me. So I am working on healing that. Anyway, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to read the archetype gallery and just go through the archetypes that were featured in the book Archetypes, so that I can start doing my archetypical wheel. And I'm going to read some of the suggested material for each of the archetypes that are personal to me. So, but we're going to start right now with the archetype gallery. So the first one that was featured was addict. I'm sure we all know some addicts. I know I've loved many addicts. I don't have an addictive personality. I'm very blessed that I don't. When I know something's, I mean, I'll take it to the limit, don't get me wrong, and I've used every drug you can possibly think of. And I mean, short 2 or 3, but I've done a lot of drugs, hard and soft, and I've used alcohol as a coping, and it has not been to my benefit. And so I'm currently not drinking at all. I am 2 months sober off of everything. We're using fasting. I fast on Wednesdays all day long, and I fast 12 hours a day, and I exercise and I meditate. And these are things I've done for a lot of my life. My biggest addiction is my addiction to other people. That's a tough one for me, but I'm doing pretty good in that area too. I'm proud of myself. Okay, addict. In our society, the addict archetype touches everyone. Aside from drugs, alcohol, food, and sex, we can be addicted to anything. Work, sports, television, exercise, computer games, spiritual practice, negative attitudes, or high-risk activities that include an adrenaline rush, as well as power, authority, control, status, fame, fortune. Admitting addiction to a pattern or substance and then breaking its hold can be very empowering. The shadow aspect of addiction is the struggle between willpower and the lack of self-control. People who are very intellectual or very emotional are linked closely to this archetype because they are skilled at rationalizing addictions. Some addictions, shopping, for example, don't seem like addictions because they're so enjoyable. But anything done to excess can turn on us. Compulsive shoppers, for example, can end up in serious debt. Just ask the fashionista who overspends because she has to have the latest styles. So that was the first archetype that was featured in this book. Alchemist. Historically, the alchemist represents a futile effort to turn base metal into gold. But the highest expression of this archetype is the search for spiritual transformation. People most likely to identify with the alchemist are those pursuing a path of spiritual development associated with the mystery schools or the study of universal laws. The shadow side of the alchemist are those pursuing a path of spiritual development. Of the alchemist is the misuse of power and occult knowledge. People seeking to transform their lives are susceptible to seduction and trickery on the shadow side of magic and wizardry. Child. The child archetype, which we all have the child archetype, includes many subtypes such as the orphan, the wounded child, the innocent, the nature child, and the invisible child. The playful child, the stepchild, the divine child, the eternal child. We all have aspects of the child within our psyches, as we were all children once. If your childhood was painful, one aspect of the archetype may dominate to the exclusion of the nature child and playful child, which represent youth at its purest and most innocent. A lack of these subtypes often manifests as an inability to experience pleasure or fun. If you are habitually stressed, cultivating the playful child or magical child can help you become more lighthearted and spontaneous. Damsel. The damsel in distress is an ancient archetype that recurs frequently in popular literature and film. Beautiful and vulnerable, the damsel needs to be rescued by the knight, who will then care for her in lavish style. Failing rescue, however, she will be obliged to awaken through a process of empowerment in which she learns to take care of herself. The shadow side of the damsel archetype is being trapped in the old patriarchal view that women are weak and helpless and must be protected. The challenge, therefore, is for the damsel to discover her own power and provide for herself rather than expect a man to do it for her. Destroyer. Death and rebirth form of the cycle of life, and systems and structures must be destroyed or dismantled so that the new life can emerge. The destroyer compels us to release what is harming us, but this archetype also contains its opposite, the rebuilder, representing the power to liberate and heal. For the shadow destroyer, destruction becomes an end in itself, a corrosive and corrupting power that can be intoxicating to wield. Gambler. The gambler is a risk taker who plays the odds. Expressions of this archetype aren't limited to card players and racetrack and casino junkies. Day traders, entrepreneurs, even compulsive lotto ticket buyers also fit the profile. Energetically, gambling is a calculated risk against an uncertain outcome. On the positive side, the gambler represents the power to trust your intuition despite others' doubts, acting on gut instinct. Gamblers respond to guidance in the moment. Many highly successful entrepreneurs consider themselves gamblers, as they make risky financial investments that more conservative investors would never consider. On the shadow side, the archetype manifests as a lack of impulse control and the compulsion to continue taking risks even in the face of heavy losses. Goddess and heroine. Goddess worship is one of the oldest spiritual traditions, tracing back more than 30,000 years. The goddess archetype and her more contemporary counterpart, the heroine, embody wisdom, guidance, sensuality, physical grace, and aestheticism. The shadow side of the goddess is exploiting or overplaying your feminine power, as we see in some movie stars and fashion models. Healer. The healer, a companion of the caregiver, lives to serve others by repairing body, mind, and spirit. This archetype expresses itself through a variety of practices, many of which do not involve the traditional healing arts or the treatment of disease. The healer can be found in any occupation or role in life, in which the aim is to assist people in transforming their physical or emotional pain, or in becoming whole. Essential characteristics of the healer including the ability to channel the energy necessary to promote physical or emotional change. Hedonist. This archetype has a ferocious appetite for the sensuous pleasures of life, including food, wine, and sex, but also art, music, and poetry, and all the more refined offerings of society. The stereotypic view of the hedonist as extremely self-indulgent is more a carryover from our Puritan heritage than an accurate description of the archetype. On the positive side, the hedonist represents creative energy that embraces the very best in life and counters our archetypal fear of losing control to our libidinous instincts. The shadow of the hedonist is the relentless pursuit of pleasure without regard for other people's well-being or your own. Judge. You don't have to be in the judicial system by profession to identify with this archetype. If you are naturally skilled at mediating and resolving problems between people, this archetype is alive in you. The judge inspires us to lead an exemplary life based on wisdom and temperance in our dealings with others. This is the archetype associated with the wisdom of Solomon, referring to the biblical story that illustrates the quintessential execution of justice. Faced with two women, each claiming to be the mother of an infant, King Solomon ordered that the baby be cut in two and half given to each woman. One woman said, "Go ahead, cut." The other said she would sooner give up her baby than see it destroyed. She, King Solomon discerned, was the true mother. From that point on, wisdom and justice were bound together. On the positive side, this archetype fosters highly refined discernment and clear seeing in evaluating issues. The shadow judge is a harsh critic passing judgment without compassion or with a hidden agenda. Sometimes this archetype is associated with suffering from having been misjudged in life, an experience that awakens the need to forgive. Lover. The lover archetype is expressed not just in romantic involvement, but also in any great passion in life. You can be a lover of the arts, nature, cooking, or Persian carpets, anything at all. What distinguishes this archetype is a sense of utter devotion, unbridled affection for someone or something that becomes the organizing principle of the lover's life. Physical appearance plays a strong role in the self-esteem of this archetype. The shadow of the lover is an exaggerated and obsessive passion that undermines the person's self-esteem and physical or mental well-being. Mediator. This archetype's virtue is smoothing relations between warring groups or individuals. The mediator's characteristics are patient and an ability to read people in situations with laser-like focus and accuracy. unlike the advocate, whose strength is emphasizing with those she helps. A good mediator understands the issues on both sides of a conflict and works to bring all parties together to resolve it. The shadow mediator has an ulterior motive or a hidden agenda and works both sides for personal gain. Mother. The mother is another fundamental archetype, one of the members of the caring family. She is the life giver, the source of nourishment, and unconditional love. This archetype is the keeper and caretaker of the family and, as the Mother Nature archetype, acts as the protector of the earth and all life. If you are deeply committed to environmental work, this archetype may define you. When you figuratively leave storms and destruction in your wake, you are enacting the wrathful mother. Stop it. You don't have to be a biological mother to carry this archetype. The mother may give birth to books or ideas or nurture others as a teacher or a chef or a restaurant owner. The shadow side of the archetype may be expressed through abusive or abandoning mothers. Networker. Although networking is closely identified with the media age, the archetype is in fact ancient. Stop it, fat boy. The networker's ability to forge alliances and connect disparate groups goes back to the survival skills of our earliest ancestors as they formed hunting groups and shared information on the best hunting grounds. This archetype is associated with the social flexibility and empathy. Stop! Which allows you to find commonality with all sorts of people, like the related archetypes of the messenger and the communicator. The networker links people via information or inspiration. The shadow networker is self-serving, using other people for personal gain without offering anything in return. Nun. The characteristics of this archetype are spiritual devotion, dedication, persistence, social transformation, education, and wisdom. On the shadow side, a life of deep spiritual devotion can often lead into the dark passages of isolation and loneliness. Today, the nun archetype is expressed in two different ways. There is the traditional nun, a woman who enters a convent, taking vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And then there is a more contemporary expression of the archetype evolving in women who have profound need for an inner spiritual life, but at the same time want an active life in the world with marriage, children, and dynamic careers. In these women, the nun archetype expresses as a passion for spiritual intimacy and prayer that isn't fulfilled by conventional religion and doesn't require withdrawal from ordinary life. The nun archetype in today's world provides a template for spiritual practice rather than for a sequestered lifestyle. Prostitute, which we all have. The prostitute archetype brings us lesson in integrity, raising issues around trading body, spirit, or identity for security or financial gain. Prostitution involves selling your talents, your ideas, or other expressions of the self as a form of selling out, of compromising your integrity. We all face the challenge of this archetype at one time or another. The prostitute is a universal archetype representing one of life's tests. The archetype activates both conscious and unconscious feelings around seduction and control, raising questions about how willing we are to sell our power or buy control of someone else's power. In order not to be destroyed by this archetype, we need to befriend it, seeing very clearly the choices it presents to us. Sabotur, which we also have. The saboteur archetype compromises all the fears and issues of low self-esteem that causes us to make choices that undermine our empowerment and success. Ignore the saboteur and you'll fall into its shadow side, self-destructive behavior. Often we sabotage opportunities because we're not yet ready to grow or change, not ready to make a transition that would require us to leave a familiar but disempowering relationship or life situation. We may project our acts of sabotage onto others to avoid taking responsibility for our choice to remain disempowered. As with the victim and the prostitute, you need to face this powerful archetype and make it your ally. Learn to listen to the saboteur and heed its warnings to avoid behavior that will undermine yourself or others. Slave. This archetype represents a total lack of power. The slave has no self-authority, no ability to choose. Within a modern context, you may feel like a psychological slave if you have surrendered your will to those with financial authority, or an individual, or a hierarchical organization, such as a corporation or the military. For African Americans, this archetype has an immediacy others may not share. But if you think about the many ways in which this archetype can be expressed, you might not be so quick to dismiss it as irrelevant to your life. We are all slaves to the system in one way or another. But it's precisely the utter powerlessness of the slave that is the strength of this archetype. The potential for personal transformation. Storyteller. The storyteller or minstrel archetype relates our wisdom and our folly. Humankind is nowhere without our stories, telling us where we are and where we've come from. The storyteller paints our successes and failures, fact or fiction, in broad or vivid strokes, embellishing reality so that it's less humdrum. For the storyteller, love isn't love, but passion, and personal power can move mountains. If you have this archetype, storytelling is the lens through which you view the world and your means of communicating your experience. The shadow storyteller, on the other hand, is an exaggerator or even an outright liar. Given your imagination and way with words, it's tempting to spin information to your advantage or hide what you don't want to reveal behind a compelling tale. The challenge for this archetype is to not use your gift to mislead. Teacher. The teacher is the communicator of knowledge, experience, skill, and wisdom. This archetype, which embodies instruction of any kind, can manifest as parental guidance, mentoring, or modeling values like generosity and kindness. The shadow teacher is a master manipulator using or abusing the tutorial relationship for status or recognition. Even worse is the shadow mentor who imparts negative information and teaches destructive, even illegal skills like burglary or how to cheat at work. Victim. We all have the victim. The victim's negative traits are obvious, but recognizing them alerts us to when we're in danger of being victimized through our own passivity or inappropriate actions. The victim archetype is the source of a fundamental survival instinct meant to give us street smarts, as well as the ability to recognize when we have victimized another human being or are about to. The shadow side of the archetype is playing the victim in order to get sympathy. The victim in us is never totally conquered, as life continually presents situations in which we have the potential to victimize or be victimized. Warrior. The warrior archetype represents physical and emotional strength as well as the ability to protect ourselves and defend our rights. An empowered warrior takes up weapons of the mind, never harming his opponent unless all other options have been exhausted. However, the shadow warrior pursues victory at all costs, setting aside any ethical considerations or wages war for personal gain. The warrior woman may do battle differently because of body strength, but when it comes to having the right instincts for survival and protection, male and female warriors are the same. So those ones are the only ones they read about, that they highlighted. So I'm going to go through and pick out some reading material that I will be reading on this channel. And that's it for today. It's Wednesday. Wisdom Wednesday. Whatever you want Wednesday. I don't know. I take Wednesday off. It's my new little schedule I've given myself. Whatever I want Wednesday.